Hey everybody, welcome back to the LuckyDog podcast. This is your host, Elias Roush. This podcast is sponsored by EliasRoushMedia.com, photo, video, digital media production. Today we're discussing Sound of Metal. Sound of Metal is a 2019 American drama film directed and co-written by Darius Marder and starring Riz Ahmed, Olivia Cook, and Paul Rossi. Lauren Ridolph and Mathal Almeric. It tells the story of it tells the story of a drummer who begins to lose his hearing. Originally, it had its world premiere in the Platform Prize program at 2019 Toronto's International Film Festival on September 6th, 2019, and then it was theatrically released to the public subsequently a year later in November 20th, 2020. And it began streaming on Prime Video December 4th. So it does kind of have this kind of wonky release in a little bit of a ways. Just kind of talking about the distribution method of this. So they had an entire year. This was at the Toronto International Film Festival before it was released to the public. So there had been some speculative small hinges of like, oh yeah, I'd seen this movie. People had said, oh yeah, this is a pretty good one. This ended up going on top 10 of movies of 2020 for me. I ended up categorizing this more as a 2020 release than a 2019 because it wasn't publicly released until 2020. So that's why I'm kind of doing a little bit, talking about it a little bit late. And so let me discuss a few things of the background. Darius Marder, actually not too familiar with that director. I don't think he has like a Wikipedia page up or anything like that. So hard to find too much on him. Screenplay by Darius Marder, and I assume that's his brother or father, maybe Abram Marder. Don't have too much information on them, unfortunately. Music. There wasn't much music to this film. Now, let me talk about kind of the cinematography. Danielle Becquet, edited by Michael E.G. Nielsen, and it was distributed by Amazon Studios. I think this is one of the better movies that have been distributed by Amazon Studios. Amazon has done a really interesting job at acquiring very niche and indie style I'd say movies. A lot of it, I think they had like a deal with A24 at one point. I'm not sure if they still do, but this definitely feels like in that same kind of realm of like an A24 style small indie film that kind of goes against the contemporary storytelling aspects. So why is Sound of Metal something to look at with a different perspective, or even listen to in a different perspective? So the Sound of Metal basically puts us in the shoes of Riz Ahmed. I was a little bit intimidated to review this specific movie because I wanted to kind of go above and beyond about all the different things that are fundamental to who we are when it comes down to the idea of losing a sense. So we have like the five senses, I think. Am I right with the five senses? Is that correct? You got smell, taste, sound, touch, and hearing. I guess is that the five? I think I got them all. But when I was ill over New Year's, I ended up having to go through, I think, losing taste and smell is probably one of the least fundamental aspects of the losing like a sense or something like that. Like losing taste or losing smell does not feel like you're inherently, you're not dying or anything like that, but it's a fundamental change in the way that you are, interpreting life. So this movie feels like it's kind of a reflection of saying, we have these, very sensitive senses, and even losing something as small. I mean, losing hearing is obviously a big freaking deal. I can't even state how big of a deal it is. But the way I was relating to this movie of someone losing a sense is, it feels like the world turns a little bit, turns black and white in a way. It's like you look at the world differently, and your shift of perspective changes. So when I was thinking, when I was sick, I was like, you know, I was like, wow, there's just so many things that you think about that have taste and have a smell. You think about just waking up daily, and uh, when you go to the gym has a smell. When you wake up, when you're making coffee, things, all of that has a smell and a taste. When you're getting ready to taste, things have like a routine sense about them. And not only do things have a taste, do they have a touch. Think about like this cup right here. So I mean, this styrofoam cup feels like, it has a specific feel, it has a specific sound, it has a specific taste, a smell a little bit. It smells a little bit like lemon. And there's so many things about an object and about everyday life that have such an inherent part of the sense that you are experiencing. Now, the thing that I was trying to compare Sound of Metal to was a complete fundamental shift in how you are interpreting everyday life. The fact is, this movie makes you look at life in a way. In my perspective, it's an experience of, what if you lost one of these senses. Now, when I lost the taste and the smell for a week and a half, I couldn't taste or smell anything, strictly from, I don't care if I was making breakfast, everything tastes like garbage. It's just like, the fundamental routine of what you do in your life is so hinged on, based on the senses that you have and things that you like doing and you like experiencing. I don't care if you are grooming yourself and you can't smell yourself to see if you smell all right. If you are or tasting something to see if something tastes all right. When you're cooking something for somebody and you can't taste anything, it's like, I don't know if it tastes good or not. It's like, I'm just giving things that I guess would normally taste good, and you just can't taste them anymore. So it's kind of the same thing in going into The Sound of Metal, when I know temporarily losing taste and temporarily losing smell is more or less a luxury, and I understand that it's not going to fundamentally change too much of who you are as a person, as would be losing almost any of your other senses. Now, I don't want that to happen again, but what I'm saying is, like I said, this movie is really putting you in the perspective of, okay, so there's a big chunk of people that have lost taste and have lost smell, but there's a small percentage of people that have lived a decent amount of life, a long life, or 20, 30, 40 years, and they've had to go through the experience of losing a sense, past losing taste or smell or something like that, losing hearing, losing sight, losing touch, the ability to feel. My ex-girlfriend, actually, her father had pneumonia a few years ago, and the pneumonia took away his ability to walk. He ended up getting an infection with the pneumonia and took away his ability to walk. He had to relearn how to walk, but within that, he lost all feeling of his body from below his waist. And so that was really sticking out to me when watching this, and kind of trying to explain and understand from someone else's perspective of losing something that is near and dear. And like I said, I don't care what you're doing, everything has an experience of the way it sounds, the way it feels, the way it tastes, the way it feel, the way something is percepted in your head is solely based on the senses that you have. And so it's almost like not being able to see the world in full color. Like I have a buddy that, can't see the world completely without, having someone to explain to him, oh, that's a different color than this. And he's colorblind to an extent where he can't see complete color, the color wheel. And I sometimes makes me feel like I have to, I got to be a little bit more empathetic and understanding to these people that have gone through these, or that don't have the ability to experience all of the senses. And the thing is, it's not always about like someone, being born without one of the senses, or it's not just about that. I know this is kind of a long-winded way of saying, you know, um, it would really be a struggle for many people to lose a sense. Now, losing sight, it obviously would be very horrible. Same thing with losing, just about, losing touch, losing hearing, losing all of these very important aspects of, living. And like I said, I don't care whether you're making breakfast. I don't care if you are grooming yourself, you're in the restroom, you're taking a sheet. I don't care if you're having uh, lunch. I don't care if you're fishing. I don't care if you're having sex. If one of the senses that you are experiencing through each one of these experiences or events or times throughout your life or just day-to-day stuff, that experience is forever different. And so, kind of wrapping this back up all the way back to Sound of Metal, this movie makes the viewer understand and the experience of losing one of the most important aspects of living, and that's hearing. And not to say that people that are not able to hear, I know that I think I actually heard that saying hearing impaired is actually derogatory towards people that are deaf. So I don't want to say, I don't want to put labels on all this stuff right now. I really want to say that this is a really respectful interpretation of being introduced into I think it's the deaf community is probably what it would be categorized as. And if I'm getting any of this wrong, you just let me know and put it in the comments. I'm trying to give this all with the most utmost respect, because I do feel like this is the experience of someone, spiraling and having to deal with it. And not only that, Ruben, the main character played by Riz Ahmed, and Olivia Cook, they're a couple. They've gone through some highs and lows and whatnot like that. So, but with saying that, their sole reliances on their income is in like a heavy metal band. And so almost immediately when this movie is kicked off, you are introduced to the so you understand that it's like an everyday thing and a toll and an expense for Riz Ahmed and Olivia Cook to perform basically on a tour nightly together. And with Riz Ahmed, having to hear is one of the most fundamental aspects of being in a band. Not to say that people that that can't hear aren't able to make music. Obviously, I think what was it Beethoven? I think wasn't he deaf or something like that? I need to kind of go back on my history on the history of music and whatnot. But not to say that you can't make music that way, but it's so much more difficult to live your life in a regular sense when you're losing your hearing, let alone playing in a band. This is almost like a doctor losing his crushing his hands and having and not being able to perform surgeries like he was able to do. This is the fundamental aspects of your body that are just conking out on you, and you need this for your sole reliance of income. Now, like, the doctor's probably going to be okay in that scenario because they'll probably have insurance, but like Riz Ahmed and Olivia Cook are not backed by anybody big. They're living basically right outside their tour bus, so it's just one of those things. So let's continue on into this a little bit more before we get into the plot. I got to say that the casting in this is amazing. Paul, I think is Rossi. He is phenomenal in this. He feels like an actual character that I want to meet in real life. I want to meet that real character in real life. Like, he feels like he plays kind of like the big brother in a way that helps in a way. So let me see if anything else like that. Yes, so 96% on Rotten Tomatoes. What is it, like 8.2 or something on IMDb, I guess. I don't know. It absolutely is something to be noted by, and it's one of the, let me see, I think it was approved by the American Sign Language Institute. I don't remember exactly. Yeah, it's named one of the best 10 films, AFI. So it did make some pretty notable praise there. And the National Board Review with Ahmed and Rossi winning Best Actor and Supporting Actor respectively. Okay, so let's talk about the pros of this movie. Like I said, this is a complete experience of a movie. I feel like almost everyone should be required to watch it or listen to this. Like I said, it puts you in the perspective of having an experience. It feels like at some parts I just wanted to cry with him and break down. Other parts I felt like I was trying to understand him understand what he's going through with him. And other times I was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? There was a lot of it's a roller coaster of emotions, and I feel like this is a much more natural way of approaching a movie, and it doesn't fall into the tropes of what normal movies would do, running away, falling in love kind of thing. This really does feel like a grounded take on what would happen if somebody was losing their hearing and they were financially up against the line. And so anything else we need to discuss? Yeah, there's maybe a handful of times I would have said that I would have changed a couple of the scenes, but honestly, it just feels like we're along with him, and if we're not in his head, we're right beside him the entire time, and I really respect that. And like I said, the sound design is probably one of the best sound designs I've heard since, I think Arrival had a really good sound design, but I think it's all the way back to Arrival, and this is some of the best sound design I can think of in a while, and I would refer to this when talking about good sound design to other people if they wanted to hear something. They're like, well, what puts you in the experience? This movie puts you in the experience, and a lot of it has to do with sound. Again, I did watch this with Bluetooth headphones. At one point, there's a doctor that says, if you listen to something too loud, then, you might want to turn it down. As soon as he said that, I went and turned it down on my speaker. I was like, this is like a cautionary tale that is horrifying me right now. So let's talk about the plot for the Sound of Metal. This will be the spoiler section. Ruben is a drummer in one half of the metal duo Blackgammon, sorry, along with the singer, his girlfriend Lou. They live in an RV while driving across the country to perform gigs when Ruben begins to suddenly lose his hearing. Like I said, it introduces you almost immediately to this guy, Ruben, and the fact that he's hard rocking out, and it's like hard rock and it close to screamo at some points, if that's what they call it these days. I don't know. when he's going to the pharmacy to seek the diagnosis, and the pharmacist, says go see the doctor and gets like a hearing test, it is the beginning of a horror film that I had no idea that we were about to watch. This was the part when I had my headphones in and I was like, this is a horrifying film to watch. Just the first I think the first 10 minutes is just him and his girlfriend kind of doing, day-to-day stuff. You hear everything that he's doing. He's taking the shower. You hear it, the faucets. You hear, making the blender blend your breakfast. And then everything has like a nice sound design, and you can feel it, hear it, that type of thing. And when he's waking up that next morning, it's the next morning that he begins to lose his hearing. It's just like instantly horrifying because it sounds like, it's the sound that they use in war films when someone gets like flashbanged or a grenade happens and they're like, you can't hear anything, or it's like you want to like blow your nose to get like the sound back or something, the pressure back in your ears. And the thing is, this was just absolutely horrifying from top to bottom. Just like him just trying to get his hearing back. He's just like you see him sitting in the shower, and he's just kind of like sitting around. Like, Riz Ahmed has one of these faces that they just want to keep the camera on him because he's got these big old eyes that are super expressive of, explaining how he feels. And Riz Ahmed's kind of like that, he always feels like he's about to go off at one point, and he's having to put a powerhouse performance on for this. So when he goes to the pharmacy, seeks a diagnosis, the pharmacist refers him to a doctor who performs a hearing test and finds that Ruben can only make out 20 to 30% of the words he hears, and his hearing will deteriorate rapidly. Holy hell, this is one of the most traumatizing aspects of the movie. It's just like, all right, this is what's going to happen to you, and after that, your hearing's not going to improve. And just ironically, hearing that is very traumatizing to hear. And he's like, what we got to do is, we got to save the hearing that you have. And he has very minimal hearing, and he's like, everything's like, it's like, as soon as I watched this, I felt like I had to listen to how loud I was listening to things, and then the environments I was in. I was like, I do not want to lose hearing like this rapidly, like him. I mean, I'm sure they don't exactly explain that might be an autoimmune deficiency or something crazy that's going on with his body, but it's not really explained why he's losing his hearing. But more or less, he can only make out he's lost about 70% of his hearing, and his hearing's going to deteriorate more rapidly. And so what they say is cochlear, I think it's called cochlear implants may benefit him. Their high cost is not covered by insurance, which is crazy. Why is insurance not cover that? But anyways, so basically what they do with this cochlear implants, it's not really explained at the beginning, but they're going to scoop out the rest of your 20 or 30% of the things that you can hear, and then they're going to put it's like a device in your ears that sends signals to your brain that is, I guess, mimicking sounds. And it's not exactly word for word the sounds that you're going to hear. So it's not like you get these implants and all of a sudden you can hear everything. It's not exactly explained like that, but they say they might help. But it completely is going to, these implants, if he gets them, are going to remove the remaining bit of his hearing. And so I was just like, this is intense. And so, but once again, that's not exactly explained all up front. So he does want the implants to eventually, but he just can't afford them. So their high cost is not covered by insurance. The doctor suggests Ruben eliminate all exposure to loud noises and later undergo further testing. Ruben, immediately what this does is it smash cuts. Doctor's like, don't be around loud noises probably ever again. What, like an hour or two later, like he's bashing, smashing, and crashing the sound of metal, just heavy metal sounds. He continues to play what I would probably call his final, his final stand, his last gig, the last real song he's going to hear or perform with what hearing he has left. And Lou, his girlfriend, just is watching him as he's playing this last little bit, and he's off key, he's not on tap, and everything's kind of off, and all of a sudden, um, he just throws all his shit down and runs outside, and he's like, fuck this, screaming and upset, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I was on an emotional roller coaster. This is like the first 20 minutes of this movie. I was like, this is a lot to handle. And so he's just like really upset and, telling her, I can't fucking hear. He's just like spazzing. And it just feels like from there, everything relatively feels pretty natural as it goes. I mean, Lou learns of Ruben's condition and wants to stop performing for his safety, but he wants to continue. Lou is also concerned about his sobriety, as he is a recovering drug addict. I don't know how in the heck at this point he didn't go for the stuff. This character has already beaten, I think it was a heroin addiction, and he's had kind of a, past that was not exactly the easiest to overcome. So he's already gone over this. They call his narcotics anonymous sponsor, Hector, who finds a rural shelter for deaf recovering addicts in the Vietnam War. Ruben leaves with Lou because they will not let her live there with him and wants only the implants. Lou, anxious for his well-being, persuades Ruben to return to the shelter. Give me 2 seconds. I got a call right here. Okay, so the Ruben leaves with Ruben leaves with Lou, and they will not let her live there with him. Okay, so yeah, they find this place. Hector finds a rural shelter for deaf recovering addicts, and that accepts Ruben, run by a man named Joe. Joe, oh my gosh, fantastic character. A recovering alcoholic who has lost his hearing in the Vietnam War. I couldn't even imagine how traumatizing that would have been to just all of a sudden have perfectly good hearing and then be in some sort of an explosion of some sort, or just all of a sudden like that just lose your hearing. I don't know what would be worse, just losing your hearing immediately or losing your hearing in the way that Ruben's losing it, just like slowly over the course of like a week and a half. But I gotta say, this was a pretty traumatizing story that I think he ends up saying, like, I still remember the song that I was listening to right before. I was it kills me to even think about the memories that they would be having at this point. And I'm trying to say this with the utmost respect. I know that there are people that have lost their hearing to other ways, and so I don't want to belittle their experiences either. I just cannot even imagine. I can barely sympathize. I definitely cannot empathize. It's losing the senses of taste and losing taste and smell feels so relatively minuscule, and especially because it's only such a short time. Losing your hearing for your entire life after that is just like, oh my goodness. So Ruben leaves with Lou because they will not let her live there, and he wants only the implants. So there is this connection of wanting hearing back. It's almost like wanting this reality back. They kind of use hearing in a way, in the same way that they would be talking about the ability to hear, wanting the ability to hear, almost as if he's a recovering addict wanting, drugs back. And so there is this connection. It's not overly stated, but they definitely talk about it in ways that feels that it's implicated. So Ruben leaves with Lou, he only wants the implants, Anxious for his well-being, Lou leaves and persuades Ruben to return to the shelter. And so Ruben begins to meet the other members of the shelter as he attends the meetings and settles into his new life. He is introduced to Diane, a teacher and the children in her class, and begins to learn American Sign Language. The one thing that I really respect this movie for is not giving us. We're introduced to tons of people who are deaf and are having full conversations with sign language, and we are, as the viewer, we cannot read from even the captions what they are talking about until Ruben actually begins to learn. And so I respect the way that they are putting us in Ruben's shoes, so that he doesn't understand. He doesn't understand what the kids are saying, and the kids the kids understand him because they can read lips, but still. Same thing with the people that he's living with. He can't really understand it, and he feels this it's not an there's this sense of isolation that you seem to receive when you lose one of your senses. And it's not just like losing your the small things like the taste and the smell. You're going to feel a small sense of isolation with that in a way, but to the extent of losing you're not going to lose your ability to talk to people, to communicate and to understand with people. When you can't hear, you are losing your ability to communicate with people and communicate with a lot of people at once. It's not just living your everyday life. But it shows for him specifically. I'm not saying this is for everybody, that Ruben has lost his temporary ability to communicate with his girlfriend. He can't hear his friend on the phone. He can't hear shit. It is very stressful for much of this movie. No matter what part of the transition he's in. This is a big transitional movie when it comes to this character. It starts with him being able to hear completely, and he's still kind of an outcast, just not an outcast, but he's already overcome addiction, so he is kind of not isolated, but he kind of puts himself, I would put himself in a different league than everyone else a little bit, just. But then on top of that, losing your hearing, now he's unable to communicate with many people, and he can't communicate with people that can hear, and he can't communicate with people that can't hear. He's right in between of the border, and so you keep on bridging that, and then he can communicate with people again, with once he starts learning the sign language, and that's actually when we as the audience can see the subtitles, and so. And this was a movie I turned off the captions for, so that I didn't exactly know what I was hearing. I wanted to be put in the shoes of Ruben this entire time, and I think it's a movie that probably benefits from not having the captions on, and maybe headphones turned to a moderate degree. You don't want to get too crazy up, because you're like, turn that shit up, and then it's like one dial. That's all I need. So yeah, Joe. So yeah, Diane, and I love the actress who plays Diane, Lauren Ridloff. I think she's actually going to be in the MCU from what I heard, and she was known for her role as Connie in Walking Dead. And let me see, she was on Broadway, Broadway play Children of a Lesser God. Yeah, she's a very glowing actress, and I enjoyed seeing her on screen. And this was also one of the times where I thought Ruben and Diane were going to kind of have a thing, and I thought they were going to have some sort of relationship connection, and I'm actually glad they didn't. The way that they introduce and kind of roll over different characters, not roll over, but they introduce and just casually set them to the side, was nice. I don't think that they overindulge in the characters they have, and they have a really strong supporting cast. And so, let me see. Joe tasks Ruben with writing endlessly and sitting peacefully in an effort to make him comfortable with the silence, and confides to him that he himself will do the same simultaneously. Ruben joins Diane's class and starts to connect with the children and the rest of the community. He gives the children and Diane basic drumming lessons. And this little montage of Ruben becoming intertwined with the community was so heartfelt. It felt like we were brought to one of our lowest points at somewhat kind of the beginning of the movie, and this just kept there for so long. We're just at the very bottom of the movie of feeling okay. And so when we're brought back up into the feeling of a little bit more positive, it is so enlightening to the point where I think I was in tears when Ruben was on the when he was on the slide with one of the kids, and he was tapping on the metal slide so that the kid could put his ear down and hear the little beats, the beats that he was making. And even talking about it now is making me kind of watery eyed and whatnot. It's just like, oh my gosh, it was a perfect blend of, these kids are having to feel the music now, and Ruben hasn't been able to use any of his hello, how's it going, Alios Rex? Thank you for following. I appreciate it. We are discussing. Thank you. Yeah, we were discussing the sound of metal and just one of the most intense scenes that they play. We were talking about spoilers, by the way, in case you're just now joining in. But anyways, once this deaf drummer is able to connect with the community and understand that he can still play music for the children in the school or in the community, and they can feel it. It's just like it's opened a door to show that his cause is not for loss. Just because he's played in a band for this many years and starts to lose his hearing does not mean that his skill has gone away. He's still able to provide and give back. And I think that was what the most important thing was for this movie. And it makes us feel amazing when we are experiencing this with him. So far, Ruben's stay has been sponsored by a church. Joe offers him a more permanent way of staying on and tells him to think about it. Ruben periodically uses the computer to see what Lou is up to, discovering her to be experimenting with her own music in Paris. He gets his friend Jen to sell his drums and other equipment, and then sells his RV and uses the money for the cochlear implant surgery. Ruben asked Joe to loan him the money back to buy his RV while he waits activation of the implant. Before I kind of get all into this, I don't know if it was 100% explained to Ruben that if he was going to get his implants implanted back in his in his head, then he was going to have to leave the community. And so, kind of on the side, not really telling anybody, he was not telling Joe, what was going on, but he was selling all of his stuff so that he could pay for the surgery for the implant. And so when he asked Joe for the money back to wait activation of the implant, there was a time when he got his surgery done that he has to wait before activation. Joe refuses, as the community is founded on the belief that deafness is not a handicap. And so this is something I really haven't focused too much on when thinking about handicaps and losses of senses and stuff like that, and not being able to do some of main things, that it's not a handicap, and that if it's him trying to fix it is against what would happen in any of these cases. Like Ruben asked Joe about this, and he says, can I have the money? And not only does Joe say, you can't have the money back to buy your RV, you're getting kicked out of the community. And it is rough to watch this happen. And I'm not. It's the most tough love you get throughout this entire movie. I think, even though there's a lot of tough love given to Ruben this movie, from his girlfriend to Joe to some of his friends to everyone. Um, but yeah, so it is very intense. Once activated, the implants allow Ruben to hear, but cause irritating feedback that disrupts his attempts to regain his old way of life. So, like I said earlier, I don't think it's immediately explained that um, that once you got these implants, that you were going to remove the rest of your hearing, and that from removing the rest of your hearing, it's going to have a completely different sound when you have these cochlear implants in. And so once he gets these implants in, he realizes that his way of life is never going to go back to the same as it was. And it's not exactly worse. I don't want to put it against the people that already do have these implants. I'm sure that they have. I'm hoping that they have mastered the implants in a way that they can fix what they're hearing, because it really did sound like, once he got the implants in, it sounds like when people are talking to him, that they're talking to him through like a really old radio, and there's like a lot of static and stuff like that. And your ability to hear different things, hear different layers. So think about when you're smelling something and you're like, all right, I'm in the kitchen and the breakfast is cooking. You can smell the eggs, you can smell the bacon, you can smell the coffee. There's different layers. Now, when you're hearing things, think about like hearing all of the things. You can hear the bacon sizzling, you can hear the coffee roasting, you can hear the eggs scrambling. Everything has a different layer that your head or your brain or whatever is doing the work is dividing the layers up. When you get the implants, the layers are all put together. So, excuse me, it makes the brain a lot more difficult for you to hear, the different aspects of life. When you're trying to hear, when 10 people are talking, it starts to sound like a smorgasbord, just a muddle of things happening. So you don't really think about that when you're doing day-to-day things. When you're, like I said, everything has a touch, everything has a smell, everything has a taste, everything has a sense. And so trying to regain his old way of life was very difficult. Ruben flies to meet Lou at her wealthy father Richard's house in Belgium, where he's settled into his new lifestyle. Richard welcomes him and allows him to stay there. At a gathering, Lou and his father perform a duet, though Ruben's implants prevent him from enjoying it. So you start to learn very quickly that these implants were maybe not the best idea. And I don't know if they were 100% explained to him, I will be honest. So it's kind of like the monkey paw. He's like, I really want my hearing back, but with getting it back, you're going to be able, the hearing you're going to get back is not anywhere what you used to hear. And so, double-edged sword. And he has to wear the implants that I think he's kind of embarrassed by a little bit. But I mean, when I see this now, I'm going to understand what these are for. And let me see anything else. I did like the way that Richard welcomes him. He's not a dick of a father. He seems to be helpful towards Lou and Ruben. This is another part where it feels very isolating being Ruben, once he has gone from the deaf community to being back to the quote unquote hearing community. I guess I'm not sure what is the non-deaf community. I guess the people able to hear. I don't know what the terms are for, but terms are. But once he's put into like a big gathering of people and trying to hear large amounts of people, he's having to kind of adjust to it in a way. And so this is another way where he has to adjust into being another part of life. Ruben and Lou discuss the possibility of playing music and touring again. Ruben that Lou makes notices this makes Lou anxious and tells her all is well and that she saved his life. She tells him that he saved hers too. Noted that I think she had some sort of scarring on her arm that you see in one shot at the very beginning, which again, the cinematography is very, very good with this. Just kind of isolating and showing different aspects of life. They don't say anything about her having self-harm problems or self-harming herself, but it's shown in like one or two scenes, and so that's where we get the kind of saved her too. The next morning, Ruben wakes up, takes his thing, and leaves while Lou is still sleeping. Bothered yet again by the sound of feedback, he sits down outside and removes his implants processors, enjoying the silence. So he finally learns to enjoy the silence, like Joe was trying to get him to understand during the time at his place. But it's just one of the most interesting and heartbreaking and surreal experiences you'll watch in a movie. And I'm glad we covered it. I'm glad everyone was here to check it out and listen, and obviously, ironically, listen. But this movie also, excuse me, this movie also made me realize how important like closed captioning is and stuff like that, and being able to be accommodating to people that have lost their hearing or lost any sense just sounds like something that we should all be much more aware of and accommodating to. Like I'm starting to understand a little bit more about handicap rules with the possibility, owning property and land, and just understanding why these are important things. And this is a movie that explains it firsthand, why, hearing is important, and how all of these aspects are important to not only the pleasures in life. Being able to hear is obviously a major pleasure. It's amazing to hear podcasts. It's amazing to hear people laugh, talk, and experience life. But like music and like I said, everything has movies, games, everything has a sound. And so if we could accommodate to those people that aren't able to experience these things, it's like it would make their lives just a little bit better as well. So having movies like this, I think, kind of open up the door to that possibility. Thank you for listening, watching LuckyDog Podcast. Right now we are streaming live on Twitch, LuckyDog Podcast. Check out all of the ways you can support the LuckyDog Podcast. Patreon is the best way. You can get all of these podcasts early and or live. Patreon, you can get it mastered SoundCloud. You can get it on all the different podcast apps, your favorite ones. Let me think anything else that we need to plug. We got the Discord, Facebook, Instagram, all the good stuff. But yeah, thank you for listening, watching LuckyDog Podcast. Whatever you're doing to support the podcast, I appreciate it. All right, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back. Thank you. Take it easy.